he talked about drinking wine. He said, don't you know that's going to cause a hangover? And he said, yeah, at the end, but the beginning and middle are excellent. And so that's really the problem with hedonism, right, is that to pursue something that makes you happy in the immediate present risks sacrificing your, well, many things, but at least, let's say, your hedonism in the medium to long term. And of course, that is one of the major problems with drug use. And alcohol is a really good example of that, because whatever hedonic kick you might get from it that moment at night, you're going to pay for almost completely. Or
it all happened so quickly. 1 minute this bus was carrying a tired but happy group of teens who had spent the day at Kings Island. The next minute, there were headlights in the bus's path, a crash, a fire, and a frantic struggle against death.
It was an accident many will never forget. The worst school bus accident in U.S. history.
A mobile memorial to the worst drunk driving crash in U.S. history.
Killing 26 students and the bus driver.
27 people, mostly kids, were killed when the bus burst into flames on impact. Evan Millward shows us how a crash in Carrollton has affected the entire region. Evan.
And Kristen, this crash changed school bus safety forever.
The church group was heading home from Kings Island when the unthinkable happened here along I-71 near Carrollton. Drunk driver Larry Mahoney plowed head-on into the bus, causing a fiery crash. Jacob Pierman's older brother John, an associate pastor, was driving the bus.
Probably not a day that goes by I don't think of it. My brother and I were pretty close.
Pierman's brother and 12-year-old niece died in the crash that killed 24 children and 3 adults. Pierman's daughter and another niece survived. He still can't help but wonder, what if?
You try to visualize how it happened and, you know, what would have been the reaction time that my brother, he was the driver of the bus, would have had to react to something, and there was just no way he could have done anything.
Despite losing 2 relatives, one of which was his only sibling, Pierman says he decided a long time ago not to harbor any hate toward Larry Mahoney.
I forgave him. I don't believe that he got up that morning with an intent to go out and kill anybody. He made a serious mistake that many people today still are making.
He hopes and prays people will think twice before driving drunk.
34-year-old Larry Mahoney of Worthville has been charged with 27 counts of capital murder. And the Commonwealth attorney says he'll ask a jury not just to convict Mahoney, but to send him to the electric chair.
The circumstances surrounding his driving behavior on the evening when these people were killed, the fact of the innocent victims involved, those are the reasons for electing to go under the death penalty statute.
Part of the reason prosecutors are seeking the death penalty is Mahoney's blood alcohol content. Mahoney has a prior drunk driving conviction, and tests that came back today show when he was driving Saturday night, his blood alcohol rate was nearly 2.5 times the legal limit.
Blood alcohol results is 0.24, 2400% by weight of blood alcohol.
Investigators are still not saying how or why Mahoney was driving the wrong way on I-71 when he struck the bus. Members of the National Transportation Safety Board are here trying to figure that out. The NTSB is also likely to address the whole issue of school buses traveling interstate highways. In the past, the board has expressed concerns that school buses are not designed for high-speed travel. The board says, for instance, that while commercial buses use diesel fuel, which is less flammable, school buses use gasoline. Indeed, today the state medical examiner said that had it not been for the gasoline-fueled fire, none of the victims would have died.
I found no evidence of incapacitating injury, let alone lethal injury, in anyone as the result of the collision.
What patterns of behavior do you recognize in a drunk driver?
As far as when they're on the road, I mean, there's certain things we look for. We look for maybe someone going too slow, someone maybe stopped and sitting at a green light, someone driving down the sidewalk. That's a very easy one. That happened with me here. Found someone driving down the sidewalk.
And even weaving between the lanes. I mean, if you're bouncing from one lane to the other, you're either on your cell phone or you're under the influence of something. And either way, you're going to get stopped.
So, I mean, that's what we look for. I mean, it just failure to signal, failure to do two things at once because your brain's not functioning properly, you know? Yeah. So.
The penalties for a first offense DUI. Basically, you divide them up into 4 categories. The first are fines, then it's sheriff work or possibly jail, DUI school, and finally probation.
People use ride-sharing services like Uber. The most common one we found?
They use them exclusively when they're out partying.
I do use Uber almost every time I drink.
A study by Uber and Mothers Against Drunk Driving showing those people are not alone. In 19 cities where ride-sharing services are allowed, the study showed drunk driving-related crashes have decreased.
As people have additional options to take safe ride homes, they really choose to.
For instance, in Seattle, where Uber's been since 2013, there's been a 10% decrease in DUI arrests.
Go ahead, Ray. This is kind of home for you.
I became a cop 12 years ago, and during that time, during the last 12 years, I've investigated a whole bunch of DWIs. I work almost every checkpoint that they do within the city, and it hits home because I'm married to a Native American. Her family's been victims of DWIs. She had a brother that was killed in a DWI crash. We together, both of us have had numerous friends that have been involved in DWI stops. So, I mean, it hits home. I had a good friend in the military who was killed by a drunk driver. So I try to get myself out there as much as I can to make it a point to the public that this is unacceptable. And it needs to stop.
And I started working in law enforcement December of '89, so I've seen my share of DWIs. I started and retired from New York, where the laws are more strict with DWIs. You get 2 DWIs and convictions in a 10-year period, you're a felon, and you go to jail for 3.5 to 7 years. So obviously we know New Mexico doesn't have those laws. And I think maybe if we make the laws a little more serious here in regards to DWIs, it'll reduce them, but we also have to educate, you know. And we have to rehab those that have issues and not just throw them in jail. Because what's going to happen when they get out of jail? They're going to go right back to their bad habits. So, and that's another area we're behind in New Mexico, unfortunately.
Well, today marks the 30th anniversary of the Carrollton bus crash. To date, it remains the deadliest drunk driving crash in our nation's history.
There is a house built out of stone, wooden floors, walls, and window sills, tables and chairs warmed by all of the dust. This is a place where I don't feel alone. This is a place where I feel at home.